Our president is incompetent. We already knew it, but now it's been confirmed by the special counsel called Robert Hur, who went and investigated Joe Biden's classified documents problem and said, you know, he definitely had some serious legal problems here. We might be able to charge him, but we can't because he's mentally incompetent. And we're going to unpack this. It is wild. The White House is defending all of this. Kamala came out. You can see, man, she's fired up over there. Karine is responding. Ian Sams from White House Counsel is responding. We got the usual suspects, including Raskin and Dan Goldman, who admits that he has no smart friends at all. So we've got Biden is blaming his staff. He made 3 pretty big mistakes yesterday, and he's got a 300+ page report saying he is not competent at all. Here is what the report looks like from the special counsel's office. The U.S. Department of Justice, the report from Robert Hur, talking about Joe Biden's classified document problem, dated February 5th, sent this one over to the Attorney General of the United States, telling Attorney General Garland that our report is attached. This is the executive summary from Robert Hur, special counsel investigating Joe Biden's classified documents problem. He starts as follows. He says, we conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if the DOJ policy did not foreclose criminal charges against the sitting president. Wow, that's strange. Because Donald Trump has been prosecuted for his classified documents problem. They say our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. Wow. Because a lot of people in the media were saying that there's no evidence of wrongdoing, that he's been exonerated. That sounds like it's a criminal statute that was there. Willfully, that's a mens rea. Retained and disclosed, those are actions. Classified materials, which you're not supposed to do after your vice presidency, temporally no longer protected by any way. Now, these materials included some pretty bad things. Marked classified documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan. And there were also notebooks containing Mr. Biden's handwritten entries about issues of national security and foreign policy implicating sensitive intelligence sources and methods. Now, FBI agents recovered these materials from the garage, offices, and basement den in his Delaware home in Wilmington. However, for reasons summarized below, we conclude that the evidence does not establish Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, prosecution of Biden is also unwarranted based on our consideration of the aggravating and mitigating factors, and so we decline prosecution of Mr. Biden. Interesting. Now, we talked about this morning, and we were asking about standards and equal standards and about people being above the law or below the law and how some people have prosecutions against them declined, like Hillary Clinton did when she smashed cell phones, or her team did, with hammers when they deleted materials that were the subject of an investigation. Some people might call that obstruction or another criminal charge, and no charges for her. She used bleach bit, like with a cloth, to get it all deleted. Joe Biden, same concept. And guess what? Neither one of them were president. So it's very strange. Now, you might agree with this. You might say, you know what? Actually, yeah, Joe Biden does have dementia, and like he probably shouldn't be prosecuted for anything. Probably shouldn't leave him alone at home for too long. You know, he might like try to cook something or turn on the stove. So you don't want that to happen. So you might say, yeah, I mean, look, let's be real. If you just looked at him like a human, if you're just like, you just pulled Joe Biden off the street and you're like, Rob, this guy stole a candy bar out of he took it out and he didn't need to, and he just stole it. He had no lawful possession of that candy bar, and here he is at home eating it. What should we do with him, Judge Rob? I'd say, this guy, he's demented. What do you want to do about it? I don't know. Just tell his wife to not let him out of the house again, you know? Just let him go. All right, whatever. Okay, I'm fine living in that country, you know, in that society. Unfortunately, that demented old man happens to be the president for some reason. Thank you, left Democrats. So that changes the equation a little bit, because we're not talking about candy bars. We're talking about classified documents, and we're talking about another system where his opponents who did the same thing or less than that are prosecuted. So it's not exactly, you know, even Stevens on that one. And by the way, again, Joe Biden was never president, so he never had lawful entitlement under the opinion clause like Trump did. But all right, so they decline. Weird how the benefits always get passed along to their team. Now they say the classified documents and other materials that were recovered in this case, they spanned Biden's career in national public life. Trump had 4 years. His whole life he's been doing this. Years, decades. Now during that career, Biden has long seen himself as a historic figure because he's deluded. Now elected to the Senate at age 29, he considered running for president as early as 1980, then did it again in 1988, 2008, and 2020. He believed his record during the decades in the Senate made him worthy of the presidency, and he collected papers and artifacts related to significant issues and events in his career. He used these materials to write memoirs that were published in 2007 and 17 to document his legacy and to cite as evidence that he was a man of presidential timber. They're all a little bit off, right? They're little diluted. Apparently he is presidential timber because they shoved him in there. But in 2009, VP Joe, when he forgot that he was president at that time, or VP when he was interviewed, he strongly opposed the military plans to send more troops to Afghanistan. Policy in Afghan was deeply important to Biden, and he labored to dissuade Obama from escalating the involvement there and repeating what Biden believed was a mistake akin to Vietnam. Now, despite Biden's advice, Obama is like, get out of here, Joe. You got dementia. Go back, eat some more ice cream. He ordered a surge of additional troops, and Biden's views endured sharp criticism from others inside and outside the administration. But he always believed history would prove him right. He retained materials, documenting his opposition to the troop surge, including a classified, handwritten memo he sent to Obama in 2009 Thanksgiving, and related marked classified documents. FBI agents recovered those materials from Biden's garage and his home in December 22 and Jan 2023. Now, also, during his 8 years as vice president, Biden regularly wrote notes by hand in notebooks. Some of those notes related to classified subjects, including the president's daily brief and the National Security Council meetings, which he should know as a senator for all these years. And some of those notes are themselves classified. Now, after the vice presidency, Biden kept those classified notebooks in unsecured and unauthorized spaces at his Virginia and Delaware homes. And he used some of those notebooks as reference material for his second memoir. Weird. Now, to our knowledge, no one has identified any classified information that was published in the book, but Biden shared that information, including some of the classified information from those notebooks with his ghostwriter. Oh my gosh. Wow. Unbelievable. They said Trump should be basically executed for that. Remember? He sat down and he was showing someone that map. There was that audio recording. Don't even know what they were looking at, whatever. Didn't charge him with that, I don't think. So shared it with his ghostwriter, spreading it around. Here, put that in your book. Was Trump charged with sharing classified documents? FBI agents recovered the notebooks from the office and basement den in Mr. Biden's Delaware home in 2023. Here are some of the documents. They were marked classified. They were about Afghanistan. Remember when we heard that? Our national security secrets, Iranian attack plans, Trump. Remember that? Classified documents about Afghanistan. We're not in a war with Iran, as far as I know. Those were just battle plans. We're in an active war at the time about Afghanistan. We had troops there until Joe Biden pulled them out and they fell out of airplanes. So these documents from fall 2009 have classification markings at the top. Oh my gosh. He should have known. They were found in a box in Mr. Biden's Delaware garage that contained other materials of great personal significance to him. He appears to have personally used and accessed, rummaging through boxes. Now, the marked classified documents were found alongside of drafts that were written of the handwritten 2009 Thanksgiving memo from Biden to Obama in his last-ditch effort to prevent him from sending more troops. These materials were proof of the stand Mr. Biden took in what he regarded as one of the most important decisions of his vice presidency. Mr. Biden wrote in his memoirs with the help of a ghostwriter in a recorded conversation with his ghostwriter in February 2017, about a month after he left office. Mr. Biden said, while referencing his Thanksgiving memo to Obama, that he had, quote, just found all the classified stuff downstairs. Wow, that's willful. He knew all my classified stuff is downstairs, and it's recorded. It didn't say it was declassified stuff, didn't say those were presidential records stuff, and at the time, he was renting a home in Virginia. Did his landlord have classification privileges? Where he met his ghostwriter to work on his second memoir. Downstairs from where they met was Mr. Biden's office where he stored his papers. He moved out of the Virginia home in 2019, consolidated his belongings in Delaware, and FBI agents later found marked classified documents about the Afghanistan troop surge in his garage. He moved them. He moved them from house to house. He knew they were classified and moved them from one location to another. So, which is, they say Trump did that. Trump moved them down the hall, moved them from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. Oh my gosh. Evidence supports the inference that when Mr. Biden said in 2017 that he had, quote, just found all the classified stuff downstairs in Virginia, he was referring to the same marked classified documents about Afghanistan that the FBI agents found in 2022 in Delaware, in his garage. They say, nevertheless, okay, all of this is facts, they say they've discovered, but nevertheless, we don't believe this evidence is sufficient. Why not? Willfulness, moving the boxes around, tons of elements there. In fact, more more than Trump. Trump has some defenses. The Presidential Records Act, although that applies to the VP too, declassification powers, all those things. But we find that this evidence, we do not believe it is sufficient. Why? Because jurors would find reasonable doubt for one or more several reasons, both when he served as the vice president and when the Afghanistan documents were found in Biden's garage in 2022. His possession of them in his Delaware home was not a basis for prosecution because as vice president and president, he had authority to keep classified documents in his home. But they were found in 2022. Okay, so he was the president, right? So the best case for charges would rely on Biden's possession of the Afghan documents in his Virginia home in February 2017, right? So they're saying basically when he was VP, that was okay. When he was president, now he's president, it kind of made it okay again. He left as VP, then it was illegal, then now he's president again. So it's like, okay, well, I guess you have clearance again, so I guess you can have the documents now. So you got to get him in this window. And it is February 2017, not VP, not president. He's a private citizen and he's sharing that info with his ghostwriter. Hey, I found his boxes. So that's the best case for charges. Now, several defenses are likely to create the reasonable doubt as to such charges. And so they tell us, for example, Mr. Biden could have found the classified Afghan documents at his Virginia home in 2017 and then just forgotten about them soon after. I just forgot. Now, this could convince some reasonable jurors that he did not retain them willfully, which is about as weak as we've ever gotten. I just forgot. Okay. Now, those are your most cherished memories. You just got done telling us that, right? Like, it's a total stretch. Like, yes, okay, look, yes, is it possible that jurors find reasonable doubt? Sure. A line that we defense attorneys will often say is if you have any doubt about anything you heard right here that is based in reason, like if you have a doubt, because people get confused, what does reasonable doubt mean? Well, just say this. If you have doubt, any doubt that is based in reason, and everybody thinks they're reasonable, right? I'm a reasonable person. I have doubts. That's reasonable. Then that is enough to overcome this. And so, sure, yeah, Biden's defense could come out and say, Joe Biden just forgot. So that's not willful. Okay, yes, true. That is the weakest garbage I've ever heard. Now, but technically true. Okay. Now, when Mr. Biden told his ghostwriter about finding, quote, all the classified stuff downstairs, his tone was matter of fact. His tone was matter of fact. You know what else would be nice to hear? The recording. You know what else would be nice to hear? The deposition transcripts, to read through those and to see those, which we'll get to. Now, for a person who had viewed classified documents nearly every day for 8 years as vice president, including regularly in his home, finding classified documents at his home less than a month after leaving the office could have been an unremarkable and forgettable event. Now, notably, the Afghan documents that were classified did not come up again in Mr. Biden's dozens of hours of recorded conversations with the ghostwriter of his book. And the place where the Afghan documents were eventually found was in his garage in a badly damaged box surrounded by household detritus. Suggests that documents might have been forgotten. Isn't that interesting? So therefore, he's just forgetful. And these are defenses. These aren't like holes in the elements. Like, for example, right? We've got elements of a crime. For example, a DUI. Are you driving a car? Okay. Is your blood alcohol above the legal limit? Okay. Those are two pretty good elements. Now, you might have some defenses to those, but if they prove those two elements, then that's it. Now, if they can't prove one of those elements, like if your blood alcohol is not over the limit, but you're driving the car, they're 0 for 1, 1 of 2, they don't win. So it's the same concept, right? If they're missing elements, then they can't prove the charges. That's not what's happening here. They got all the elements: willful retention, shared it, got it, possession, all things. Now they're just talking about, well, some jurors might maybe think differently about it, and so we can't bring it. Did Jack Smith have this conversation? No. Did they give Trump the benefits of the doubt in any of these? No. In addition, Mr. Biden's memory, here we go, was significantly limited, both during his recorded interviews with the ghostwriter in 2017, he was gone years ago, and in his interview with our office in 2023. Dude was gone, and they knew that. And maybe that's why they didn't put him up as president, because they're like, this dude is on the way out. Hillary, sure, step in. And his cooperation with our investigation, including by reporting to the government that the Afghanistan documents were in his Delaware garage, will likely convince some jurors that he made an innocent mistake rather than acting willfully. That is, with intent to break the law, because that's what the statute requires. Now, they say another viable defense is that Mr. Biden might not have retained the classified documents in his Virginia home at all. They could have been stored by mistake and without his knowledge at his Delaware home since the time he was vice president, as were other classified documents recovered during our investigation. And that could rebut the charges that he willfully retained them because he had other documents that he didn't know about. It sounds like he knew about the ones in Virginia, but it sounds like he didn't know about the other ones, maybe. And so maybe they think he also didn't know about them like the other half. Now, here's where we hear about Biden. Now, given Mr. Biden's limited limited precision and recall. During his interviews with his ghostwriter and with our office, jurors may hesitate to place too much evidentiary weight on a single 8-word utterance to his ghostwriter about finding classified documents in Virginia in the absence of other more direct evidence. We searched for such additional evidence and found it wanting. In particular, no witnesses, no photos, no email, no text messages, or no any other evidence conclusively places the Afghan documents at their Virginia home in 2017. So we think it's there, but we can't corroborate it with other stuff. So in addition to this shortage of evidence, there are other innocent explanations for the documents that we cannot refute. When Biden told his ghostwriter that he, quote, just found all the classified stuff downstairs, he could have been referring to something other than the Afghan documents, and our report discusses those possibilities in detail. We have also considered that at trial, Biden, here's the big line that's catching all of the headlines. At trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Based on our direct interactions with and observations of him, he is someone for whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. We conclude that the evidence is not sufficient to convict, and we decline to recommend the prosecution of him for his willful retention of the classified Afghanistan documents. Now, that line is catching a lot of eyeballs, rightfully so. He has poor memory, can't remember anything. And I would love to know what the rest of that transcript says. What does the transcript say? And what does the video say? Did you video record that? Because the White House is saying, no, this is ridiculous. He's not like this at all. He's got a lot of vigor. So why can't we see the video then? Joe, release it. So FBI agents recovered from unlocked drawers in the office and the basement a set of notebooks that he used as VP. Evidence shows that he knew the notebooks had classified info. He wrote down obviously sensitive information that was discussed at the briefings. He met with Obama. He met in the Situation Room about matters of national security. He read his notebook entries aloud during the meetings with his ghostwriter. Biden sometimes skipped over presumptively classified materials and warned his ghostwriter that the entries might be classified, but at least 3 times Biden read from classified entries aloud to his ghostwriter, nearly verbatim. Trump didn't do that. Some evidence suggests that Mr. Biden knew he could not keep the classified handwritten notes at home after leaving his office. He had decades of experience with classified information. He was deeply familiar with the measures taken to safeguard this. Asked about the reports that Trump had kept classified documents at his home, Biden wondered, he said, how could anyone be that irresponsible? Remember? And he voiced concern about what data was in there that may compromise sources and methods. He lectured Trump about this. They all freaked out. Now, while vice president, he kept his notebooks in a White House safe for a time, in contrast to the decision after leaving office to keep them at home in unlocked drawers. So he locked those down until he didn't think he needed to anymore. When Biden left, he also knew that his staff decided to store note cards containing his classified notes in a SCIF. And he knew his notebooks contained the same type of classified information. And he told his ghostwriter, the same staff who arranged to secure his note cards, that he didn't even know he had retained possession of his classified notebooks. Twice in 2017, Biden visited the National Archives SCIF to review his classified records, yet he kept his notebooks, which contained the same information, in unlocked drawers at homes. He had strong motivations to do so, to ignore the rules. He didn't want to follow the classified rules. He consulted notebooks liberally during hours of his discussions, and he viewed them as highly private and valued possessions. And so we do not, however, believe that this evidence would meet the government's burden, particularly that Biden intended to do something that the law forbids. Consistent with statements Biden made during our interview with him and arguments made by the White House counsel, we expect the defense at trial would be that he thought his notebooks were his personal property, a guy with 30 years experience. He thought I was allowed to take them home, even if they contained classified information. So the I'm just stupid defense, right? I didn't know. Well, why can't Trump use that defense? Why can't Trump just say, I got legal advice. I thought I could take these. I thought I had the power as the president to declassify these things. I thought I could do this. Everyone else took classified documents. I did it too. Why can't Trump use that? Because he's Trump, obviously. And there's a double standard. And one guy's above the law. The other guy they just claim is. During our interview of him, Biden was emphatic. He declared, those notebooks are my property. Every president before me has done the exact same thing. Wild, right? I believe that, actually. Now, that is, they've kept handwritten classified materials after leaving office. I'm sure if they raided Obama's house, they'd find something. Give me a break. He also cited the diaries that President Reagan kept in his private home, noting that they included classified info as well. Yeah, but only one president's been arrested for this. Joe, your administration did it. Contemporaneous Contemporaneous evidence suggests that when Biden left office in 2017, he believed he was allowed to keep the notebooks. In a recorded conversation, he explained that despite his staff's views to the contrary, they said no. They told him no. That's obstruction. A lot of people told Trump no. They charged him with a crime. He did not think he was required to turn in the note cards to the National Archives, where they were stored in a SCIF, and he had not wanted to do so. At trial, he would argue plausibly he thought the same thing about the notebooks. Now, if this is what Biden thought, we believe he was mistaken about what the law permits. Okay, but this view finds some support in historical practice. Weird. The clearest example is President Reagan. He left the White House in '89 with 8 years worth of handwritten diaries, which he kept in California, even though they contained top secret information. Nobody arrested him. During the criminal litigation involving a Reagan administration official, they said that those were personal records. Yet we know of no steps the DOJ and other agencies took to investigate Reagan for mishandling classified information. Of course not. Most jurors would likely find evidence of this precedent and say Biden relied on it, and would expect that to be admitted at trial, saying Biden did not act willfully. Same thing with Trump. Every one of those is an argument Trump can apply, even the obstruction stuff. Now, as with the marked classified documents, because the evidence is not sufficient, we decline prosecution. We also considered whether Biden willfully disclosed national defense information to his ghostwriter by reading aloud classified notebook pages on at least 3 occasions. Mr. Biden should have known that by reading his unfiltered notes about his classified meetings literally from the Situation Room, he risked sharing classified information with his ghostwriter. But the evidence does not show that when he shared the specific passages, that he knew the passages were classified. Well, because he wrote it down. It didn't have the red stuff around the side. Or that he intended to share classified information. And so Biden's lapses in attention and vigilance demonstrate why former officials should not keep classified materials unsecured at home and read them aloud. However, we conclude that Biden's actions were unintentional. Give me a break. He's reading it to them. Declined to charge Biden for disclosure of these passages to his ghostwriter. Now, we've evaluated all the considerations, and they say historically, after leaving office, many former presidents and vice presidents, how does the DOJ even go to bed at night? Many former presidents and VPs have knowingly taken home sensitive materials related to national security for their administrations without being charged with crimes. This historical record is important context for judging whether and why to charge Joe. Trump is the only one that doesn't belong here. Okay, one of these things is not like the others. With one exception, Trump, there is no record of the DOJ prosecuting a former president for mishandling these documents from their own administration. The only exception is Trump, right? Now, they say it is not our role to assess the criminal charges pending against Trump, but several distinctions are clear here. Unlike those with Biden, Trump has serious aggravating facts. They say Trump should have returned them, right? Trump did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return because he says they're his, but Biden turned his documents in. So it's obstruction. Okay. He turned his documents in and he consented to the search of multiple locations. He sat for a voluntary interview and he cooperated in other ways, which, by the way, Trump was doing that for a long period of time. They were battling over these records, okay, that Trump thought were his, and they didn't go send the FBI in to go raid Biden. Okay. It's a difference in tone. One was orchestrated to go prosecute him for doing the same stuff that every other president has done. So he says, like, I'm not going to, it's not my role, but you're part of the DOJ, the same DOJ that has a double standard for Trump. So he says, look, in reaching our decision, we did not consider every circumstance in which criminal charges against the former president could be brought. But on the facts of this case, the fundamental interests of society do not require criminal charges against Biden. For this reason, we are applying the federal principles of prosecution and we decline. Now, the practices of maintaining these materials poses serious risks to national security, and the department routinely highlights the risks that are here. But addressing these with criminal charges is not the appropriate response, saying, for other recovered classified documents, we also declined to prosecute. The FBI recovered additional marked classified documents at the Penn Biden Center, elsewhere in the Delaware home. We had collections in his Senate papers at the University of Delaware, multiple locations, but the evidence suggests it was not done willfully. He could have plausibly brought those by mistake. We also investigated whether persons other than Biden knowingly mishandled these documents, and our investigation shows they did not. In reaching these conclusions, right, so it's not the staff's fault. Don't blame the staff. They didn't do it. They were following Joe's orders. In reaching these conclusions, we note the numerous previous instances in which marked classified documents have been discovered intermixed with other documents as well. Okay, a lot of other people do it. Only Trump gets prosecuted. Now, this is wild, so it's more destruction of evidence, which means maybe this is like you just got done here, Robert Hur, telling us that Trump had aggravating factors for, not returning things. And we have evidence now being destroyed in this conspiracy conspiracy. So the ghostwriter, maybe Joe Biden didn't put pressure on him, maybe he did, but apparently after learning that this was an investigation, the guy who actually wrote Biden's books, the ghostwriter, deleted audio recordings that he had created of his talks with Mr. Biden. Okay, deleted it, covered it up. So the evidence of Joe communicating to this guy was deleted. The recordings had significant evidentiary value. Weird. Are they going to charge him with a crime? Now, after telling the special counsel's office what he had done, the ghostwriter turned over his computer and the external hard drive, and the FBI got it all back. Based on the FBI's analysis, it appears, we think, that the FBI recovered all the deleted audio files relating to the memoir, though portions, oh man, it's great, of a few of the files appear to be missing. Isn't that incredible? So the dude deletes everything. FBI shows up. He's like, I had it. I deleted it. I freaked out. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. Here's my crap. Recover it. Don't charge me with a crime, please. They recover some of the files, but a few of the files appear to be missing. Weird. It's weird how stuff goes missing. Just like those cell tower records for the pipe bomber on January 6th. The FBI just has corrupted data everywhere they go. Weird, 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 weird. They can't, so they should get an IT person over there, which is possible when forensic tools are used to recover deleted files. Now, the ghostwriter kept and did not delete or attempt to delete his near verbatim transcripts of the recordings and produced those transcripts to us, including for each of the incomplete recovered files. I'm sure. It's weird how it just goes missing. We considered whether to charge the ghostwriter with obstruction, but we believe the evidence would be insufficient to obtain a conviction and therefore not prosecuting him either. Now, while the ghostwriter admitted that he deleted the recordings after he learned, the evidence falls short of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he did that to impede an investigation, which is the intent required by law. Man, this is like a nice prosecutor. You didn't have much intent there. Yeah, you're good. You're good. No crime. Which is the intent required by law. By the way, I'm more in favor of, right? Like, I think we've got a lot of psycho prosecutors in this country who are just trying to, not do justice, just pad their numbers. But anyways, in his interviews, the ghostwriter offered plausible, innocent reasons for why he deleted it. Well, they were, they take up a lot of space on my hard drive, so I wanted, install that new game. He also preserved his transcripts that contain some of the most incriminating information against Biden, almost deleted that, including his statement about finding all the classified stuff downstairs, which is inconsistent. So he gave it up. He's like, no, he actually said this. And the ghostwriter voluntarily produced his notes and devices from which the recordings were recovered. And so therefore, they say, in conclusion, for these reasons, we believe that the admissible evidence would not suffice to obtain a conviction for the ghostwriter on balance. We also do not support his prosecution. And there is a lot more to go. And so, of course, we're going to have the full PDF at robertgovea.com if you want to read the rest of it. That really breaks down everything that happened there. The PDFs are all there. Links are down in the description below. But Joe Biden came out and was very upset about this report. And he came and delivered an impromptu press conference, and it was a disaster. If you're looking for the worst, horror movie to watch this weekend, just put on the president's press briefing and you'll be shocked. But we're going to play some of his reaction when he gets into it with the press. We're going to recap the mistakes that he made talking about Beau's Rosary and Mexico. CNN fact checks him, I think, on 3 separate points, and we're going to listen to all of that before we get reaction from the White House. Kamala, Ian Sams, and of course, Karine, all trying to scramble the paper over this thing. This is what the president sounded like after he got done explaining how he's competent, he's not demented, everything in this report is wrong. This is our president.
Were moved not by me, but my staff.
Take ownership, man. Don't blame your staff.
Mr. President, for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They express concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer to that question?
I'm the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
Mr. President, why are you refusing the names of world leaders?
Thank you, everyone.
I did not share classified information. I did not share it.
With your ghostwriter?
With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But the special counsel said
no, he did not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
But Mr. President,
let me answer your question. Fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was of multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified. I should have said should be private because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what he is referring to. It was not classified information in that document. That was not classified.
Look at that press, man. They were going at him, and he was not real happy about some of those questions. And so if you go through the entire segment, right, the press briefing was to come out and communicate that Joe Biden has his faculties, okay, that he's not just an elderly old man who's confused about certain things. And so Greg Price put this together. He says, in a few hours in yesterday's day, Joe Biden really botched several things. First of all, he said that he's the president of red and green states, which is strange. He came out to tell us how he's on his game and he's very competent. He forgets Hunter Biden's Rosary, where he got it from, Our Lady Day. And then he says that the Egyptian president is from Mexico, which is news to me. So here are the three exchanges from Greg Price.
When we pushed all these programs, I said, I'm going to be a president for everybody, whether you live in a red state or a green state.
Wrong, red or blue. Here is the other clip.
Raise that. Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, wasn't any of their damn business. Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented. I wear, since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of
Guadalupe.
Every Memorial Day, we hold a service remembering him attending where he...
Oops, he came out. I'm totally there. Our Lady Day. Anyways, I'm sad. Don't ask me to finish my sentence. And then lastly, about Mexico and Egypt.
I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. I talked to Bibi to open the gate on the Israeli side.
Is Mexico in the Middle East now? Maybe this is why they can't figure out what's going on at the border, because they think it's on the wrong continent. All right. So he's talking about the president of Egypt, but he got the country wrong. All right. So those were the three big examples of just some, kind of top of mind flubs, like, you make some mistakes, your mental acuity's not all there. But Joe Biden also came out and basically lied to America in his press briefing. And CNN says, actually, none of that was true. When you start seeing this, you start saying to yourself, have they decided that this dude is out? Did someone just pull, execute order 66 on Joe Biden? Pull the presidency. In other words, when the special report dropped, was Kamala Harris out there last night like, you know what you should do, Joe? Press conference. Yeah, it's not that late. It's only 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You got energy. Get him a cup of coffee. Hey, get Joe some coffee. Go out there in front of the press and Joe, you should take some questions. And when you get a question about Israel, definitely talk about that one. You're really good on Israel. So go back out to the podium. Don't leave, in fact, without talking about Israel. Kamala's like rubbing his shoulders, yeah, come on, Joe. You're good. Here, sniff this glue or whatever. Here are these smelling salts. Pop this up. Get out there. Or Gavin Newsom, maybe he was doing it too. We're waiting for them. They're all waiting for a tripwire. And Joe had it. And so he comes out to try to show he's competent. And then he lies to all of us. He says, actually, that's not what the special counsel said at all. CNN calls him out. Here's what it sounds like.
One thing that President Biden said is basically that he stored the documents in filing cabinets that could be locked. Let's listen.
All the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked.
Daniel?
Just not true, John. This report from the special counsel includes photos. Those photos include shots of a box just sitting in President Biden's Delaware garage. The special counsel described it as a badly damaged box sitting amid household detritus. So there was some material that was in cabinets, locked or lockable, as the president said, but all of it certainly not. And that open, unsealed, damaged box included, according to the special counsel, highly sensitive, top secret material about the war in Afghanistan.
All right, there was the box. So you saw that one right there. And gosh, it looks like the FBI agents didn't dump that all over the floor. Isn't that interesting? So we do have a photograph. It does look like a broken box. Does not look like that is anything that's in a locked file cabinet in any way, shape, or form. And there is a bunch of other household crap back there, right? Looks like the lamp is flipped over there, an old stool or something. A bunch of garbage. Hunter's, crack pipes or something are back there. It looks like from his, Hoboville. But yeah, that's one of the photos.
Of top secret material about the war in Afghanistan.
Okay, another claim that President Biden made. None of the documents were highly classified. Let's listen.
Lie.
None of it was high classified. Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners?
No.
None of that.
No.
Daniel?
Thank you,
That
Daniel.
claim that he didn't have any material that was quote-unquote high classified is also not true, John. The special counsel's report says that the president possessed multiple highly classified documents that were indeed marked as being highly classified documents, including some marked as top secret / SCI, sensitive compartmented information. That is a very high level of classification. For example, special counsel Hur discussed 2 top secret documents about Afghanistan found in that open, unsealed, damaged box in the garage, one of which Hur said contains highly sensitive info about military programs and another that contains info about sensitive intelligence sources and methods.
Weird.
Now, it's not clear, John, if any of those Biden documents had those colored borders we saw on classified docs that former President Trump had, which I think is what President Biden was referring to when he talked about red around the corners. But still, whatever coloring these documents had, the special counsel says they were clearly marked as highly classified. And then I should add, Hur also said that investigators' analysis of Biden's own handwritten notes from his time as vice president showed that these notebooks also contained highly classified info. Those were not marked. And Hur said a sampling of 37 excerpts found that, quote, 8 are top secret with sensitive compartmented information, 7 of which include information concerning human intelligence sources, plus 6 others that were top secret.
Well, and we heard, Jake Tapper, we heard Rachel Maddow, we heard all these people screaming, these are America's most trusted sources, these are our sources, it's totally irresponsible, Trump should be executed immediately. And now their president has done the same thing, if not even worse. He wasn't president at the time.
And then the third claim that he made, Daniel, there was that he did not share classified information with a ghostwriter on a book he was working on. Listen to that.
I did not share classified information. I did not share it.
With your ghostwriter?
With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But special counsel said
no, he did not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
Yes, he did.
So he's entitled to say he didn't do it. He can defend himself. But he also said the special counsel didn't say that he did share that classified info with the ghostwriter. Except, John, the special counsel did say that explicitly. Hur wrote, quote, Mr. Biden shared information, including some classified information from those notebooks with his ghostwriter. So there it is in black and white. Now, Hur did elaborate that Biden shared classified info with the ghostwriter by reading nearly verbatim from the notebooks on at least 3 occasions, including notes from meetings in the Situation Room. He did find that Biden, quote, at times tried to avoid sharing classified info, like by skipping over certain material as he was reading them to the ghostwriter. And Hur did write that the evidence does not show that Biden knew the info was classified. Nonetheless, even though the special counsel did clearly give him some material to defend himself with, this is not a factual defense. So he could cite the factual stuff, Hur said, didn't know it was intentional, etc. But declaring the special counsel just did not say what he said, John, is not a factual defense.
Important to note, Daniel Dale, always great to have you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, okay, yeah, important to note. Our president's a liar and demented. Maybe he's not lying. Maybe he's just demented. He's like, I just read it. We're like, did you though, Joe? Like, do you know how to read still? What's going on with you? All right, so that is CNN fact-checking him, and that's interesting to see from CNN. Like, wow, they just went one after the other. Liar, liar, liar. 3 for 3. Wow, thank you for that. So, okay. So who made that call? All right, so Kamala is also very upset about this. You see her head's bobbing all over the place, and she's going to now come out and respond forcefully on behalf of Joe Biden. And she strings together a sentence or two, so, we're going to mark this down as a historic day.
I'm glad you asked.
Oh, great.
Listen, I have been privileged and proud to serve as Vice President of the United States with Joe Biden as President of the United States. And what I saw of that report last night, I believe is, as a former prosecutor, the comments that were made by that prosecutor, gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate.
Whoa, 3 words.
October 7th.
Pretty good. Wait, what?
Israel experienced a horrific attack, and I will tell you, we got the calls, the president and myself, in the hours after that occurred. It was an intense moment for the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, and I was in almost every meeting with the president in the hours and days that followed.
Is she going to be our next president? Is this her warm-up little routine? Are we going to have President Kamala? Oh, gosh.
Countless hours with the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, the heads of our intelligence community, and the president was in front of and on top of it all.
Wow.
Asking questions and requiring that America's military and intelligence community and diplomatic community would figure out and know how many people were dead, how many are Americans, how many hostages.
All right, so we can't take any more of that, but you get the point, right? So she talks about Israel for a long time, and she says Joe Biden was in the room, he was there, he's got a lot of vigor and all the things, and she's all fired up, and I don't know what, if she's like getting ready to be slotted in, or if she just, had an extra cup of coffee this morning, who knows? Question went over to Karine and said, hey, Karine, so if Joe Biden is mentally incapable, if he's incompetent, if he can't remember certain things like when his son's birthday was, or his death day was, or if he can't remember when he was vice president, for example, right? These are pretty important things. These are not just facts that people forget. You were the vice president of America. So if he can't remember that and he is deficient, who's actually running the country?
Thank you, Karine. If the special counsel says President Biden
has got significant limitations on his memory, then who is helping him run the country?
The President of the United States runs the country. The Commander-in-Chief runs the country.
How can he be trusted with the nuclear codes? I get that you're saying
you can't remember
that
that's why.
Nobody in the building would say that he's got an issue with his memory. But just the little part of what we get to see, he's made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake on camera this week.
So I'm going to be very clear here. The reality is that report, that part of the report does not live in reality. It just doesn't.
So the special...
It was gratuitous. You heard from Ian Sams, my colleague. It is unacceptable, and it does not live in reality. That is just the facts. And look, it is a closed case. That is what the special counsel said. And what matters is that the president in the last 3 years has delivered on the economy, has delivered
all
on
right,
healthcare,
pivot,
has turned this country around after the last president left us with an economy that was in a tailspin. That's what we were dealing with. If you think about the world leaders and issues that have been going on in this country for the past 2-3 years.
So his memory doesn't matter because he did.
You think about Ukraine. The president was able to bring together NATO allies. They've been the strongest than they've ever been, and make sure that we are providing what Ukraine.
Okay, she's filibustering.
Need as they're fighting aggression, Putin's aggression, and that is what this president has been able to do. His experience as former senator, as former vice president, and now president has gotten us to a place where we've been able to turn things around in a way that we meet the needs of the.
All right, so just filibustering away. I think that's the end of it. Does she bail?
The needs of the American people, whether it's domestic issues or national security issues, and that is what matters. That part of the report does not live in reality. Bye, everybody. Have a great.
Oh, she bailed after Ducey. Okay, so we also had Ian Sams. Ian Sams, you know him. He is a spokesperson. I don't think he's a lawyer or anything. He's just a spokesperson who it was brought out here to address some of this stuff. And here is what he was saying when he was explaining some of these memory lapses.
Does that mean that possible memory lapses happened because he was so distracted by what was happening overseas, or do you dispute that he had any memory issues during those hours of interviews?
Yeah, they say, Israel. He was very distracted by Israel. And you say, okay, maybe he shouldn't be. He's a president. He can, juggle multiple things. But does that mean that he can't remember his son's death or his time as vice president?
I dispute that the characterizations about his memory that were in the report are accurate, because they're not. And I think the president spoke very clearly about how his mind was on other things. I mean, he was dealing with a huge international crisis of great global consequence. And, he was trying his best to answer questions in this interview because he wanted to be fully cooperative.
So there were no memory lapses during.
I think there's something important that people should remember about the way that sort of interviews like this happen. God forbid, one of you guys ever have to get interviewed by a prosecutor, and, I hope you don't. Witnesses are told, as I mentioned by special counsel, to do the best they can to recall or remember things. And they're not supposed to speculate. They want facts. They want facts and evidence. And so, I think probably in almost every prosecutorial interview you can imagine that people have said that they don't recall things because that's what they're instructed to do. So I think that's just important context to keep in mind.
Okay, so that context is not really relevant to the criticism from the special counsel. He said Joe Biden couldn't remember basic dates, right? He's very confused, even going back to 2017. And it's much more than he doesn't recall, whether a breakfast happened at 11 a.m. or 1 p.m. I don't recall that, but, I definitely met, but what happened, the details, I don't know. That's relevant. What he's describing is normal. What we hear from Joe Biden is not normal. And so the left is, kind of having a meltdown over a lot of this. This was what MSNBC sounded like. They're calling this COMEY 2.0. You remember how bitter they were after the Hillary loss. This is what took place on MSNBC's show, the Mika and Joe Brzezinski show, which airs every morning over there on MSNBC.
Before we started the program, I was saying to Chuck Rosenberg sitting here, can you explain to me how this is different from what Jim Comey did and what we think of as in 2016 as Comey won his first intercession in the election? In that case, you were referring to in July, I think, of 2016. What you just said, I, like you, am old enough to remember when prosecutors either charged someone and issued a charging document, or they issued a declension, and the declension was one sentence, which says we decline to prosecute. Chuck, I think, is going to talk about something that I don't know as much about, and the detail of it is how the difference between back in those days when we had the independent counsel statute and what we have now, where we have.
Look at this Chiron at the bottom. These people are so sour. Look at this Chiron. I just got this. Presidential criminal charges. Trump 91, Biden 0. Look at them. That's what they do over there at MSNBC. That's hysterical. Weird. They are scoreboard people. They just run up the scoreboard. That's your DOJ. Why is this, right? That is evidence of your own corruption. They both had classified documents problems, and you're now illustrating your double standard for your entire audience to see. It's pathetic.
Special counsels and what the regulations are and what they have to do. I will say that there's no doubt in my mind that this special prosecutor could have written the same report without using these words.
Elderly man with a poor memory. That's a nice front page, isn't it? Elderly man with a poor memory. Amazing. Okay, so they don't like that, right? Because they know he is an elderly man with a poor memory. In fact, it's a really, really poor memory, and he's not a good contender for the presidency when we need somebody who's competent. This is what Weissmann said. He's also over at MSNBC, says it's totally inappropriate.
So I have very strong views on that based on the model that James Comey set, where somebody there, Hillary Clinton, was not being charged. Sounds familiar. Yep. This is not being charged. And yet a person goes out and gives their opinion with adjectives and adverbs about what they think. Entirely inappropriate. That is
Wait, what? Did you see all of Jack Smith's filings and all of his language? Everything he says is his opinion. It's a lot of democracy and the worst thing ever and all this crap. So they just don't like when the opinions go against their guys. That's all. They're perfectly happy with opinions against the right and against Trump. But when you criticize Hillary or you say Joe Biden has elderly old man, they don't like that at all.
The role of the Department of Justice. I don't even understand why you would engage in, just as a prosecutorial matter, your memory today is irrelevant. Whether I find you in an interview to have forgotten things, certainly to say, what do you remember about certain documents in your house, 4 or 5 years ago, I would understand that you might not remember that. To talk about your memory today, irrelevant. It is gratuitous.
No, it is not. It goes to the legal concept of whether a person has actual mens rea, whether their faculties are there. And there are processes. If you are not competent in the middle of a prosecution, there's ways to validate that. Like criminal law has that built in, whether a jury buys it or not. So in other words, if somebody's incompetent, there are competency proceedings, right? You take a person out of the criminal proceedings, you send them over to a psychiatrist. If you have a disagreement, you see 3 psychiatrists. If 2 disagree, one says competent, he can stand trial. Other says incompetent, he can't stand trial. You have a tiebreaker with third. Can we restore that person to competency? Can we put him in mental health court? What's the deal? So it's very relevant. We talk about people's mental acuity all the time in criminal law. So it's absolutely relevant. It's not gratuitous at all. And he waded into his analysis, and he's probably right that if he filed in a Democrat district somewhere, they'd say Joe Biden just got confused. It's all a mistake, right? Likelihood of conviction maybe is low. That's why they prosecuted Trump in DC. We're going to see what happens in Florida, but they go after him in their favored jurisdictions where there is a likelihood of conviction, even if Trump is innocent. When he is innocent, they don't care. So, all right, that's Weissmann, and they're really having flashbacks to Comey and Hillary Clinton and all the things. We got Raskin, who is explaining to us that these are just cheap shots, man. We don't like these cheap shots from the special counsel.
As the lead Democrat on the Oversight Committee, we would like to do some legislation to get our best archivists and librarians together to figure out a way that we can tag material more quickly and prevent it from kind of negligent mishandling, the kind we had from Mike Pence and Joe Biden. But that is an ocean away from Donald Trump, who deliberately pilfered hundreds of top secret classified government documents and then refused to return them and hid them all over his house. Whereas this Republican special counsel said
Joe Biden did that. He had documents all over the place. Penn Biden Center, Delaware, multiple locations.
That Joe Biden had been completely forthcoming and cooperative, and they're not bringing any criminal charges against him. He did take some gratuitous slaps at Joe.
Okay, so that memo went out, right? Gratuitous. They all got that memo. They all got their text messages from George Soros this morning.
Biden, because of his age, and a lot of these kind of age discriminatory and age insulting remarks are getting rather tiresome. All we really need from a special prosecutor like her is a decision whether there's any legal grounds to move forward. He said there's not, and he didn't need to take all those cheap shots. And obviously you could take the same kinds of cheap shots at Donald Trump, who recently...
You guys do take those cheap shots all the time. You say it all the time. But it's not a cheap shot. It's part of the legal analysis. In fact, if he were competent, if he had his faculties with him, he might actually be charged, right? Because of the conduct. It was willful. He was sharing it with other people. He knew it was there. And there's a lot of evidence there. Now, the fact that he's not being charged is the double standard, right? The standard is evident. Now, Dan Goldman, our last clip of the day, he is confirming to us that his friends are idiots. He has no one intelligent that he hangs out with, not even Jake Tapper. He says that Joe Biden is smarter than anyone I've ever spoken to. That's how smart he is. This is Dan Goldman, okay? Apparently the dumbest guy in New York.
The memory lapses that President Biden is described as having in this report, this is not the first time anybody's raised issues of President Biden's acuity.
That's true.
And in fact, twice this week, President Biden referenced European leaders, conversations he had with them in 2021 when both those European leaders had long been dead.
Yeah,
he
twice.
confused Macron with Mitterrand. He confused Helmut Kohl with Angela Merkel.
And Mexico
Are you really
with
acting
Israel.
As if
Mexico with Hamas.
There's nothing
and
to
Gaza.
these issues or these concerns?
I saw from the White House counsel that they disputed this recollection of the interview. And I will tell you, Jake, I was in Israel on October 7th, as you know, and President Biden was nice enough to call me. And I can tell you, this was the day before that interview, I can tell you he was sharper than anyone I've spoken to about a very complex geopolitical urgent issue.
Smarter than anyone, sharper than anyone I've ever spoken to. Dan needs to talk to more people, okay? Got to get out of your little DC bubble, my friend, because Joe Biden is brain dead. So, my friends, our president is incompetent. We've already known that for quite some time. Now more of the world knows it. In all seriousness, I kind of wish they would have, delayed this a little bit into the election cycle, because I have been very clear about this. I fully endorse Joe Biden for the Democrat nominee. Completely, unequivocally endorse this man. I personally have some disagreements with Robert Hur. I think Joe Biden has a plenty of capacity. I think he's going to be great. He's got some more pep in the step. You saw him ride that bike that one time. He sometimes jogs for like 2 or 3 steps. He can still make his way up that short step on the airplane, the short stairs. I think he's got a little bit of energy left. So I support him being the nominee all the way up until the election. Okay, what happens then is, we'll leave it there. But I support him. So I think we can, cattle prod him along just a little bit longer. Okay. Oh yeah, he fell off the bike. Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, forget the bike example. He's okay. We'll let him go. All right, so that is going to be it for us on this one, my friends. His incompetency is confirmed. I still believe in him. He's got vigor. So we're going to be continuing to cover this and all the other affairs. Thank you, my friends, for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for liking this video. Thanks for checking out our links in the description. We've got Watch Your Lodge, a bunch of great February events, and another one I'm very excited about building your food sovereignty. That's coming up in February. We've got Zen Wellness for Politics is coming up. We've got an unboxing coming up at watchyourlodge.com. A lot of fun stuff. So make sure you go check it out. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel as well, because we're going to be back here to cover all of this incompetency and more. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one.